Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and I'm hoping everybody can hear me well enough. I'm Carolyn White. I'm the Voter Services Chair of the League of Women Voters of Park Rapids, and we want to welcome you to this event. And the Park Rapids Enterprise is also co-sponsoring with us and helping with the technical Facebook Live things. I want to remind you of a few things. One is that the League of Women Voters Park Rapids organization is always nonpartisan in both our education and our advocacy. We never support a particular political party or the candidates for public office, but we do promote voter education at all levels for all offices. And I do want to say thank you to Shannon for helping us set up here, and also give you a little idea of what's going on this afternoon. During our normal years, we would have 4 to 6 candidate forums with probably hour-long formats, and the community would have submitted questions, and we would have gone back and forth between the candidates' oppositions for each office. But between problems with schedules, distance rules, etc., we found that this type of format was really difficult. So today we have invited all the candidates that usually would have been included in those forums to come and speak to the public. And we thank all the candidates who were able to rearrange their schedules and get here to attend this afternoon. Each candidate will be allotted about 10 minutes at the microphone to introduce themselves and address 2 or 3 of the relevant issues that for their offices. We emailed each candidate with a couple of those questions that we thought were particularly interested to the voting public here in Park Rapids and Hubbard County. If you have questions as a voter and they have not been addressed today, please seek out the candidate by email or by phone and ask your questions directly to them. This is a Facebook Live event, and it's being recorded, and we will post it also on the Enterprise website and the League of Women Voters Park Rapids website, in the hope that voters that can't watch it live will be able to access this recording at their leisure. Please remember to observe the public distancing, health rules, and wear a mask if you can't stay 6 feet apart. We have hand wipes on the table there and some masks available if we need them. We also have some bottles of water for the candidates if they need that before their speech. I want to remind you that early voting started yesterday here in Minnesota. If you have questions on how to vote from home or where to cast an early ballot, please see the Secretary of State's website, or in Hubbard County, you can call the county auditor, A. Ray. Sorry. You can't have that stuff going straight. If you do vote at home, you can put your ballot in a drop box that's on the east side of the courthouse, or you can use the mail, and remember you can track your ballot on the Secretary of State's website. So I'm going to turn it over to the candidates now, and we've got a list. I'll put the name tag up. They're going to be speaking to the Facebook Live camera over here, so you may want to get over that direction if you want eye contact, but otherwise I will turn it over to them. And Bob Wills, why don't you start?
Okay, thanks, Stacy. Appreciate that. Hello, my name is Bob Wills, and I'm running unopposed for the position of City Councilman. I'm presently on the City Council as its junior member, which is interesting because I'm also the oldest member of City Council. I've held this position for a little over 20 months now, having been appointed to fill the vacancy of our present Mayor, Ryan Lexner. My background is engineering, for which I have a PhD. I've taught at Oklahoma State University and the University of North Dakota, and I've spent over 20 years in industry. I'm an Army veteran, having spent a tour of duty in Vietnam, and now that I've retired from industry, I'm working at a variety of volunteer services at the Food Shelf and Meals on Wheels, to name a couple. My wife and I have been associated with this area for over 30 years, having had a cabin on Nagle Lake and now home in Park Rapids. We're business owners here too, running Beagle and Wolf Books and Bindery, so you may have seen that. I originally sought this office at the urging of friends and have found it to be quite interesting, enough to seek this office for an additional 4 years and carry on the work that we're doing. I'd have to say that my learning curve has been quite steep, and this last year with the COVID-19 pandemic has certainly been challenging. We've been asked to go over a leading topic of concern for 2021. COVID-19 has been on such an overwhelming problem in 2020, impacting so many people in so many ways. I could only hope that 2021 is better. I don't believe that it's suddenly going to disappear, but even if it did, there's a lot of recovery that will need to be done, establishing businesses, jobs, and reducing unemployment. I believe that if we continue to follow good health and distancing practices, 2021 can be better than what we have now. I remember when I first went out wearing a mask and glove thinking, people are going to stare at me and give me a hard time. But there were other folks out there wearing masks, some with gloves, and it wasn't as bad as I thought, and no one gave me a hard time. I think that I and others have made a difference in the impact of COVID-19 in Minnesota, certainly having lowered the risk of those people to whom I had delivered food. But come January, I think COVID-19 will still be on the forefront of what we have to deal with. One of the questions that we've been asked, or that's been raised, is what things can be done to encourage people to come and visit in Park Rapids. I think first might be additional signage, both for people in cars and pedestrians, to help direct them to locations or areas that they might find interesting. On a sidewalk, for example, might be this many steps to Heartland Park. Also, I'd suggest encouraging the landscaping in the city. We have a committee on which I sit called Urban Forestry that works hard to maintain and promote trees on our city and our boulevards and parks. These make it a very inviting atmosphere. I would encourage stores and restaurants to be open in the evening. The success with 2nd Street Stage, I believe, points this out very nicely. I would suggest having more artwork or sculptures. I see people noticing the sculptures all the time, taking selfies with them. I think that's a good draw. I would say support the former Armory as a venue for entertainment. It's taken a lot to get that to where it is today, and I think it's going to be a great facility for entertainment here in Park Rapids. When my wife and I travel, we always are aware of how clean a city is. Make certain our parks are clean and usable. And also I would suggest support of our Chamber of Commerce and help disseminate literature and information about stores and events in our city. Another question is, what budget cuts could be made of health emergency? We're just into my 2nd budget year, so I'm still learning. I don't sit on the Finance Committee, but we do go through the budget several times before the City Council approves the final levy in December. So budget cuts, that's difficult. About 70% of our budget is wages and benefits. I'd rather not see jobs or staff hours cut. Every staff hour that's cut has consequences of things not being done. One of the things that has happened that actually is a budget cut of sorts is that we've cut back on some of the inspections. So this is not really a budget cut item, but more of a lowering contact with respect to COVID-19. There are some things that can be done with respect to spending. For example, an old truck could be temporarily repaired and purchased anew at a later date, but that's just putting off the expense. Funds could be tapped where items come in under budget this year, and they could carry over to next year. And then finally, how are we environmentally friendly? Well, I'm aware of one solar energy collector on a city home. That's a start, but it's not a lot. I'd like to see more. Recently, we installed a charging station for electric cars to lower energy costs and lessen pollution. This has also had the effect of drawing more people to Park Rapids. Seeking a fill station that they might also stop at might cause them to drop by stores and businesses. I do know also that the city has been slowly changing over to LEDs in our buildings and at the airport. That will reduce energy and therefore cost. I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the Park Rapids Enterprise for providing this forum for today's candidates.
And Liz, if we can get you up next.
Hello, my name is Liz Stone, and I am running unopposed for the position of City Council member for the City of Park Rapids. I've had the opportunity to serve on the City Council for the last 4 years, and I look forward to serving for 4 more. I've lived in Park Rapids for 35 years. I grew up in this town and raised my own kids in this town. I've worked in the capacity as a teacher for 18 years in the neighboring city of Nevis, and I am currently employed at Thielens Excavating as manager. As a city council member, I want to assist the city of Park Rapids and its residents in continuing to make Park Rapids a great place to live and raise a family. I want to make Park Rapids a great place to call home for those already living here and those moving into our city. One of the questions we were asked is what we would do to make Park Rapids a more inclusive place to live and more welcoming to newcomers. And I think that to foster inclusivity in our city, it's important to be aware of the groups within Park Rapids that are underrepresented. I think it's important to be intentional in reaching out to them in order to gather input from them and encourage them to participate in city-related functions and events. I think it's crucial that city officials be vigilant in identifying the concerns and wants of our residents and determining how best to address these concerns and make sure city residents feel that they are being listened to. Given the impact of the current health emergency, and more specifically COVID, has had and what it has had on city taxpayers, there's been unforeseen costs to the city. I will continue to work hard to make sure taxpayers aren't further impacted, and I'm very sensitive to the circumstances that COVID has created for our residents and business owners within our city. I think it's important to be a good steward of taxpayer money and the PPP funding that has been made available. I think it's important to work to keep city businesses open and thriving during these uncertain times. Finally, we were asked what plans are in the works to make Park Rapids a more environmentally friendly city. Over the last few months, the city planner has been mentoring an intern who has been working on developing a plan for 2 charging stations for electric cars. I believe one station will be located in downtown Park Rapids and the other over by the City Hall. There was also talk of future plans for putting up one over by the Chamber of Commerce. In regard to other environmental friendly opportunities in the city, Bob had mentioned the one solar collector, and that was the only other one that I could really think of as well. But it's important that we look at other opportunities to get people into our city and using the resources that we have. The Parks and Rec Board has been very busy coming up with other opportunities to expand our parks, and there's been lots of discussion regarding the extension of the bike trail system. So, I thank you very much.
Thank you, Liz. And Alan Roy.
Abuju Ginoa, Wabashki Mayangan Indigo, Secretary Treasurer Alan Roy, Miki Kane Maguyan, Gaye, Mongan Dudame Ode, Mini, Zaganing and Dunjaba, Gawaba Bigani Kagash Koniganing. Hello, my name is Alan Roy. I'm running for State Senate here in Senate District 2. I'm a DFL endorsed candidate here in Minnesota, and I'm running on a number of issues here for State Senate. I'm running on the economy. I think that we need to start helping our small businesses because of the pandemic and the issues that they're facing. I'm also running on the economy because a lot of our workers have been laid off, and there's a lot of concern about families being able to pay their bills. Another area of concern that I'm running on is healthcare. I know in greater Minnesota that we have a lot of healthcare disparities, especially in underserved and underrepresented communities. And so making sure that we have adequate resources, and we also need to start working on making sure that healthcare is affordable. And not only affordable, but accessible. For example, I know in Baudette, if you want to go and get some health services, such as if you're having a baby, you have to make a trip all the way to Bemidji. There's also other areas such as specialty care. We know that some folks in the autistic community and other special needs community have to travel hours just to get care and resources. The third area, because I am a father of 3, is education. I think that our children we need to provide our educators, our schools, and our children with the resources that they need so that they're successful. I'm an Army veteran. I get it. I understand. And I currently serve in the reserves, and so what we often say in leadership terms is if you want someone to be successful, you have to give them tools to be successful. And so what I mean by that is we need to get more resources and training to our school systems, to our educators, and to our families as they're going through this, especially with the pandemic. I will also say that I chose to run because a lot of family and friends had approached me. I currently serve on the White Earth Tribal Council. I've worked with the White House, I've worked with Congress, I've worked with the Legislature. I've even worked with my opponent, Mr. Paul Ledke. And so I understand the system, I understand what needs to happen in the district, and I want to make a difference here. And so folks approached me, they said, you understand this, Alan, you're a tribal member, you're a veteran, you're a family man, you understand what needs to happen here. And so they asked me to run, and that's why I'm running, because I want to help everyone that lives here. There's 3 questions that the League of Women Voters want us to answer. And the first one here is, what are my underlying principles and our plan to handle how to redistrict the state of Minnesota after the 2020 census? This is an incredibly important year for voters because it is a census year. And after this term that I'm running for is only a 2-year term. Normally it's a 4-year term, but it's only a 2-year term this time around. And so after the census is done and the demographics are collected, they redistrict. And so this Senate seat may not exist 2 years from now, but then again, the district may be redrawn. My plan would be to support a nonpartisan commission in order to redistrict the district so that it's fair and equitable for everyone that lives here. And that's where my support will go. The second question that they ask is, as a member of the legislature, how will you support the counties, cities, and the school districts during this health emergency? We need to make sure that we're providing enough funding and resources to the cities, counties, and the education system. The answer that money is tight, I don't think that's the right answer, especially when it comes to our children and our families. When we get down to the legislature, what I like to say, because I am a treasurer and I understand the importance of funding, is our budget reflects our values. It really does. And so if we prioritize our children and families and schools and our healthcare system, that will certainly reflect our budget priorities. And I will certainly be advocating for the cities, the counties, and our education system down there, especially when it comes to PPE, personal protective equipment, because we want to make sure that everyone's safe. The third question that they ask is, how can you help the unemployed, especially in the tourism, restaurant, and bar industries? This is incredibly important to our Senate district because a lot of tourism comes in, and that's how we pay, a lot of our workers pay their bills. And so this can be supported through more small business grants for our small businesses out there, because a lot of them have suffered. When this pandemic first broke out, we didn't know much about it, but we've learned stuff over time. and we're starting to open up. The governor has recently laid out some benchmarks that need to be addressed. I would like to take a stronger look at those and see where we can have a glide path to victory. I thank you for your time, miigwech, and I hope to earn your vote on November 3rd. Thank you.
Okay, David Suby?
Well, hi. My name is David Suby, and I'm running for the Minnesota Legislature in District 2B. I want to thank the League of Women Voters of Park Rapids for inviting me here today. I attended the University of Minnesota and graduated with a degree in chemistry. During the summers, I worked for a concrete company. After I finished college, I started my own concrete contracting business, which I ran for the next 43 years. I've been married for 49 years to my wife, Sally, who couldn't be here today because she's at her nephew's wedding. I have 2 daughters who are both doctors and 3 grandchildren. I decided to run for this office because I didn't feel the incumbent should run unopposed. But as I have traveled the hundreds of miles through this huge district and visited with superintendents of schools, city officials, bankers, farmers, and the indigenous people, I have found that there are so many needs that are not being met. In order to pay people a living wage, we need good jobs. A dire lack of housing and child care, inadequate broadband, a shortage of skilled workers, and infrastructure needs remain the biggest barriers to economic growth in our district. As far as the question about redistricting, states must reevaluate the populations of their districts every 10 years. If the districts are not equal in population, the maps must be redrawn. The problem is the same legislators directly affected by the new maps are the ones drawing them. My mother, who was an excellent and admired history teacher, almost on her own raised 5 independent-minded sons. My father traveled for his job selling school supplies. She felt strongly that all members of our society mattered. Never was an opportunity lost for her to drum this message into us. As a result, I truly understand that as a legislator, I will have a responsibility to do the best I can for all my constituents, not just for my party or for my own self-interest in getting elected. I believe, like President Obama, that fairly drawn districts are important to state government's legitimacy and effectiveness. Some states are addressing the problem by putting together independent commissions to help with the redistricting process. This sounds good, but it takes the redistricting process away from the people that got elected. For the past few census cycles, the Minnesota Supreme Court has done the redistricting for the state. They had to do this because of the politically charged climate in the legislature. The U.S. Constitution intended that this work be completed by the state legislatures. The legislature should set clear guidelines for redistricting. If it is unable to come to a redistricting agreement, the Minnesota Supreme Court can follow the prepared guidelines. This will keep the legislature involved in the process. To answer the question, how can the legislature support counties, cities, and school districts during this health emergency, I called the superintendents of both the Detroit Lake schools and the Monoman schools. Both were concerned about stabilizing funding. Schools are paid by the state based on enrollment. Some parents have opted for homeschooling or online academic academies, and these students won't be counted in the per pupil enrollment funding. Detroit Lake's enrollment is down between 160 and 178 students. This is almost $1.8 million that they're going to lose. Both Detroit Lakes and Monoman are losing funding of up to $10,000 per student. The Monoman superintendent would like consistent state guidance given in a timely manner. The mixed messages the school receives are confusing regarding what is safe and what is not. At this time, Governor Walz wants these decisions to be made locally, but it would be helpful to schools if it was decided by the state, so the guidance is consistent. You might think that a school doesn't need as much money if student enrollment is down, but the costs of having school in a pandemic are really high and constantly changing. New busing requirements have social distancing rules that require twice as many buses and drivers, or they have to double the routes. Only 13 students at a time can be on a bus. Many of the routes cover a distance of 25 to 30 miles. Because of this, Mahnomen needed to purchase a new bus, and luckily they were able to get the last bus in the state of Minnesota. The cost of PPE, or personal protective equipment, is double what it was 2 years ago. Mahnomen schools had to purchase a thermal camera that scans the temperature of each student as they enter the building. A virus-killing electrostatic fogger has been purchased to fog each area of the school nightly. Cloth masks must be collected nightly and laundered at the school. Now, some of these costs were covered by the CARES funding, but you can see the ongoing costs mounting. All schools are responsible for the distribution of free meals to qualified families that have opted for distance learning. Mahnomen schools are responsible for 4 distribution sites that are far from the school, including Bijou and Netawash. This requires extra management and transportation money. Finally, both Detroit Lakes and Mahnomen talk about the lack of available, consistent broadband that is so necessary for distance learning. Remember, we don't know if a school will need to switch completely from distance learning to distance learning at a moment's notice. Using the CARES money, both schools purchased plans for hotspots. Detroit Lakes is spending $5,000 a month for this service. And broadband is not only a concern for our schools, but for the economy and job growth in our whole district. Everything is interconnected, and the virus has highlighted the huge need for internet service. The largest part of our state's budget is designated for education, but to cover the budget deficit due to COVID, the legislature will have to be both creative and smart. We may have to look to the federal government for assistance. Raising state taxes until we are back on firm footing is another path to the solution. We have a choice. We can fight against ourselves or solve this together. We have examples in our history to guide us, and with good leaders and firm guidance, we will see this through. How can we help the tourism and restaurant and bar industries? Restaurants, hotels, and tourism are volatile industries. As the winter begins and weather changes, we know this is going to be a more challenging time. The unemployed need unemployment insurance payments more than ever. Here are some ways we can all help. We could support restaurants by ordering takeaway and delivery. We could tip generously. We can let our state representatives know that we would support efforts to help the food, hotel, and tourism industry. We need to work with the state tourism, hospitality, and food service industry to prepare recovery plans. State tourism and restaurant promotion campaigns could begin. These could help to restore customer and traveler confidence. You know, this crisis may be an opportunity to rethink the tourism industry. The most important topic I think all legislators have to address this year will be job creation. My background in chemistry taught me that facts matter. Science should be the guide, made by the governor and the legislature for all the decisions regarding the virus. The bonding bill should have been passed. It would have created over 27,000 jobs. These are jobs that the workers and tradesmen of Clearwater County and the rest of the district desperately need. And I just want to say, last night, we lost a champion for the people, Justice Ginsburg. What a great loss for our democracy. This election is becoming more important every day. Someday our children and grandchildren will be asking how we felt, and most importantly, what we did to protect our democracy. let's give them something to talk about with pride. Talk to people, write editorials, call radio programs, help encourage people to vote. This is not the time to be Minnesota shy. If we all do our part, we can win. Thank you.
Jeremiah Lind.
How's everybody doing? It's all kind of Mad Max up in here, but we're doing good. For the first part here, I'd like to talk about myself and our campaign, and then for the latter half, I'll discuss the questions forwarded by the League. I'd like to begin by thanking the League of Women Voters so much for having this event and bringing these people together. It's so important that we remain informed about our candidates and issues important to people this year. I want to thank the candidates all for coming and giving people that opportunity to know what they're for and what they're trying to advance into our laws. And I'd like to thank everybody here watching and watching at home perhaps, who are staying engaged as citizens. So, my name is Jeremiah Lind. I'm running for Minnesota House 2A. I'm the DFL endorsed candidate. Minnesota House District 2A stretches from just around Akeley all the way north to the northernmost tip of Minnesota, the northwest angle, which borders Canada past Lake of the Woods. I decided to run because of my children, because I wanted to make sure that they didn't grow up in a world that was dirtier, poorer, and sicker than the one that I had, and to do everything that I could to make sure to make a better world for them. I work for a company called Complete Solar in the solar industry, and every day I interconnect solar systems to the electrical grid, and that is my full-time job, and I do it while also raising my 3 beautiful children. And so like David with his children and Alan with his, the real reason we're trying to do this is to make sure that they have all the opportunities that we had growing up, and really isn't that what our parents did for us and what we all try to do generationally. My campaign has 3 main platforms, or main planks to our platform, beginning with sustainability. Briefly and simply, sustainability is using the resources of today in a way that doesn't compromise the needs of future generations. It means balancing our needs economically, socially, and environmentally in a way that benefits the most stakeholders and doesn't leave long-term damages. Underneath the next plank in our platform is regarding governmental and electoral reforms. I want to make sure that no law comes between you and your right to vote. I want to make sure that voting is an easy, accessible, transparent, and safe process. And this year, as we've seen, the importance for robust and strong election laws and rules and oversight are critical as we try to remain safe during this pandemic. I also firmly believe that we need to remove corporate interest from politics by instituting either publicly funded elections or finding other means of removing undue corporate influence and dark money from our political system. I think that it does a disservice to the real people that we are meant to represent in legislature. And I also believe deeply in the need for state and then nationwide ranked choice voting, which will allow for a greater spectrum of representation within our political systems. And the final plank in our platform is social justice reforms. And that begins with greater access to mental health care and chemical addiction services. And it is an attempt to improve the lives of people and also stop social interventions before they start. Whenever so many bad things happen in our world, we say, if only they had better health care or better access to mental health care, but we don't do anything about it. And I think that by doing that, we're going to help people improve their lives. As a component of stopping the revolving door justice system, I believe in instituting a process of reparative corrections that doesn't unduly punish people who have served their sentences, but makes sure that they're able to go on and lead productive lives. And I'm also supportive of the full legalization of cannabis for recreational use as a means of both social justice reform, economic reform, and human rights issues. So those are the main components of our platform and what we want to move forward to the legislature this year. If you wanted to learn more about it, we have a website, Lind for House, that's LIEND for house.com, and that's where you can go to donate or volunteer or support our campaign as we try to bring these ideas forward. And now to address the questions forwarded by the League. To paraphrase, what about redistricting? And what about redistricting? 2021 is going to be such an important year for just so many reasons, not the least of which is how the census is going to impact how we redraw these lines. And I am proud to be both endorsed by the DFL and to have a resolution within our resolutions to have redistricting done by an impartial, nonpartisan body who will draw the lines according to population in a logical way. In Minnesota, we're very proud to avoid the gerrymandering that has struck some states that seeks to disenfranchise voters or carve out certain populations to ensure that they always remain in one party's hands. And I want to make sure that we avoid that by allowing a nonpartisan body to divide things in a logical manner. As a member of the legislature, how will you support counties, cities, and school districts during this health emergency? And the short answer for this, and the thing that is so important to me and so many of our candidates, is we need to make sure that every Minnesotan has health insurance. I lost my health insurance a month into this pandemic when my insurer quadrupled my premiums on me. And I'm just thankful that the remainder of my family has insurance through a different plan. But having to go through a health crisis without insurance, I'm one of millions of people. 20 million people whose health insurance was married to their employment who lost it and found themselves in the middle of a health crisis without the ability to see a doctor, without a comprehensive testing strategy in place, and without the guarantees that they would be able to get the health care that they need to get better. And then obviously supporting other measures that we have put in place. I believe that we need to have a safe and effective vaccine to truly be able to return to normal in our society. My child started her first year of kindergarten this year, and I, like so many parents of this area, am just hoping that our educators have the tools that they need to keep our kids safe, and that we can keep one another safe as we move forward. And that's going to be so critically important, how we respond to COVID and the economic impacts in all things. And how can you help the unemployed, especially in the tourism, restaurant, and bar industries? So one thing, I'm a big proponent of the creative arts industry. My undergraduate degree was in theater arts. I'm a performer and a producer by trade. And the creative arts industry in Minnesota, although generally focused towards the Twin Cities, is a $1 billion industry for the entire state. A nice statistic is every person who goes to the theater spends $20 additional to that ticket price in businesses that surround that performance. And so when we look at creative solutions and how to energize and stimulate our economy, I think it's important to look to those avenues of supporting and subsidizing the creative arts and ensure that people have something interesting to go see. And I also believe that by integrating the proper cannabis legalization process into our state law and legislature, we can also create a cannabis tourism industry that states like Colorado and California have both enjoyed. COVID is the most important topic coming into the year 2021. How we respond to the impacts of so many people losing their jobs, how we respond to the health crisis, and we need to send responsible, innovative, creative people to solve these problems. I'm approaching this office with a very open heart and a very open mind. I want to build a strong partnership with my fellow DFL candidates and partners in the legislature to make sure that we can respond to this in a way that we will be proud to say in the future to our children that we did everything that we could in responding to it. So, in closing, thank you again. Please vote early, please be safe, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
All right, let's switch back to the county and have Dan Stacy. There you go, Dan.
Thank you.
I'll adjust the camera.
No.
Anine, my name is Dan Stacy, and I'm the County Commissioner with
District 4 and have been since 2012. I am running unopposed this year. But with that, I want to give you a little background about myself. Sorry I had to turn the mic just a little bit because I'd rather address you. Number one, I'm married to my wife, Tammy Stacy, who is in the back, kind of taking it easy back there and enjoying this. And I have two sons, Jeffrey Stacy, who's a deputy and a owner of Jeff's Professional Tree Care Service, and my youngest son, Daniel Scott, who also works for Jeff and his business. And I have 5 grandchildren, one that I get to see daily, as my wife and I are caregivers for my father-in-law, Gene Momskog, who is a veteran, used to be an air traffic controller for 20 years, but was involved in a motor vehicle accident, and he's got dementia. So he's been with us for 5 years, and that's an experience in itself, being a caregiver, each time it takes. My background, when I first started out in Wadena County, I was a patrolman for Monaga Police Department, Sebeka Police Department, and Staples. Unfortunately, in 1997, I got a little mishap with the drug driver. It took me out of my profession. I'm a little short on one side, so I wobble a little bit, but that's okay. After that, I went to Bemidji State University with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and psychology. I took that information and started out with the Department of Corrections for the state in Walker, Minnesota for a short term. And then I proceeded over to D.W. Jones Property Management. I did a lot of property management, working with many different social, economic status individuals. And there's a great need there for housing. And from there I went on to my current job is with the Nevis Public School District as a transportation coordinator and bus driver. So when I heard about busing, I'm on that one. And again, like I say, I'm here as your county commissioner and seeking re-election for this term that's coming up. So, you know, there's many issues here, but I think the first one that we need to address is just being informed. Having all of you come here to League of Women Voters is very important, with 100+ years of informing and conversations with the community. This is where it starts. You need to get educated. And with that, on the second part of that, I think it's very important with the census, the 2020 census. Our commissioners, you have 5 of them. Each one of us have different departments that we work with, 2 commissioners per department head. Tom is working with the census, but the census is the most important thing, I think, the issues of this year. It is the most important. 10 years, this affects your federal and state funding. It affects our school districts. It affects our cities. It affects our counties. Department heads, you know, social services, highway department, whatever. You need to do that. From last I heard from Tom, I believe Park Rapids, I think, is at 76%?
70%.
70%. And Hubbard County, I believe, is at 48%.
Right.
48%. Now, I think last time we were at 57%, I believe. We need to reach out, contact your neighbors, ask them if they've done this. Simple little form. Well, that's what I thought. Simple form. I responded. I did everything by the internet. That was great. About 2 weeks ago, my wife and I got this packet, 49-page document. Has anybody else got that? Wow. Let me tell you, my wife started out answering the questions for herself and her father, and she said, "Honey, this is it's very interesting."
Yeah.
A lot of time, a lot of questions. Some questions, when I went through there, I kind of thought, yeah. But being in government, I understand the importance of these questions. And so I encourage you to reach out today. I believe we have until October 31st.
No, September 30th.
September 30th, misinformed. September 30th to get that information out. So please get that done. So going on to, had 3 questions that the league would like us to address. And the first question says, in the upcoming year, what are the guiding principles you will use in making budget adjustments, cuts and/or tax increases in response to the economic problems caused by COVID? Well, first of all, I think you'd be very pleased that Hubbard County had the opportunity of meeting the commissioners, meeting with the department heads, and working diligently to reduce about $2.1 million in operation. Now, we all say that's great, and it is great, $2.1 million. Out of a $40+ million corporation, that's not bad. But keep in mind, even though we did them, like I heard one gentleman mention prior to me, is that just means we put these things on the back burner that needs to be addressed. And eventually we have to address it. So needless to say, we are on it. I think we have a really good, proactive county board, and we work diligently on that. The second question is, how are you going to handle redistricting at the county level, given the problems of collecting census data? Well, like most of the people had said prior to, and I truly do believe it, is that we need to do and file the 2020 census. We have to do that. We as a county government, we don't deal with that. We don't have anything to do with redistricting at all. But it's important that all of you, all of the voices within Hubbard County, no matter where you live, need to hear you. We need to hear your voices of what you want, what you need. And we can't do that unless we have the funding. So please do that. Third question is, what can the county do to ensure better broadband and access to the internet at an affordable price? Well, if you have an iPhone, sorry if you have an Android, but if you have an iPhone, sorry. If you have an iPhone, these babies are great, okay? But there are some limitations to our cell phone coverage. Myself, my wife and I live on 10th Crow Wing. Been a resident since 1999, raised my children here, went to Nevis Public School, internet, cell phone, my son Daniel, 10 years of age, my wife goes out and buys a cell phone, great. But these are very important. But there are some limitations. You drive up to Bemidji, I drive up Highway 64. During the summer months, forget it. You get a couple miles out of town and that's the end of it, you drop your calls. And why is that? Well, part of it is we have a lot of service providers. We have Arvig, we have Paul Bunyan. We have about 5 of them in the county to provide internet services. But a tower, your phone only goes so far from a tower. Needing more towers. We need to work. This is what we can do as a county government, is working together with the service providers to get that out. I've heard numerous times from the Nevis school district, the children saying, hey Dan, they want us to do distance learning, this especially in the spring of the year, but we don't have internet. What do we do? How do we get it? And so this is a true issue that needs to be addressed, but that's something that the county can do in working with the providers, getting enough towers. There's fixed internet where you bounce tower to tower instead of running fiber optics. The difficulty of fiber optics is, you have many distance before you can get to the next farm. It costs money to run all that stuff, but it is important. And I especially learned that I wasn't too excited when the county decided, hey, we're going to have laptops for you, and we're going to get you phones. So now we have laptops and phones, data privacy, you have a question, you may question one of the commissioners, like, what did we do, blah, blah, blah. You have access to all of our communications by making that request. But on the same token, here comes COVID, the spring of the year. It's like, wow, now we're doing Zoom meetings, not meeting in person anymore. Many of our committees that we serve on are Zoom meetings. In one way, it's a positive because you can spend more time with the issues in the meeting at hand versus commuting back and forth. I got to drive 34 miles back and forth to Park Rapids. It takes time. You got traffic. You got all these different things. But in your home office, you have a better opportunity to think on the issues at hand and address them. So, again, I want to say thank you very much for coming here on a Saturday. It's a beautiful day. We're supposed to have a nice warm week, which would be great. But I encourage you about the 2020 census. I encourage you to contact us. Each year that I am on for your county commissioner, I get more and more people reaching out, and that's what you need to do. Hey Dan, what about this? How come my township road can't be a county road? How can we set up different things? We have VRBO things, we have many topics that in 2020, 2021, we have a lot of issues coming up. Some of those issues are VRBO. We have shoreline ordinances. It's an issue. When people come in, although we're supposed to be a buyer beware state, they come in, they buy the home on the lake, they put up a addition, something closer than that 100 feet, and all of a sudden the neighbor calls up and says, hey, zoning, did my neighbor Dan have this? Did he have a permit? Did he apply for this? And it starts a process. It takes a lot of energy away from our department heads. It's disheartening if you're the owner of that lake home. So we've talked about numerous things as far as educating the public, maybe a pamphlet, hey, purchase this land at 10th Crow Wing Den, or 10th Crow Wing, and we'll record it. Well, here is the shoreline ordinance. Be aware of all these things that are out there. We have the pipeline that's been stalled, kicked down the line numerous times, numerous years. That could be controversial, knowing that society has changed in this last year as a county commissioner and meeting with people. I deal with people all the time, from young students to adults to teachers to commissioners to the citizenry of Hubbard County, and they're agitated. They're agitated of this whole deal with COVID, and I understand it and respect that. But we need to be mindful of each and every person's thoughts, okay? Values, things of that nature. Protest, no problem. Protest, don't destroy things. It'll cost us as taxpayers money when things get destroyed. With that, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity of being here. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We're on the website. I got some cards. But thank you again. Was that too hot? Sorry.
Okay, Shar?
It's all yours.
Thank you. I, Shar Christensen, I'm a District 2 Commissioner. I thank you for coming today, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for inviting me. I started in local government in 1998 in Becker County. I was a clerk and then supervisor, and then we moved here in 2005. I missed being in government at the local level, and I went to my township meeting and said, does anybody want to quit? And somebody did. So I was appointed supervisor, and then I was also elected. And then in 2016, the District 2 Commissioner moved out of the area. I was appointed, and then I ran in 2016. I was elected, and once again, I'm running unopposed again this year. It's a privilege to serve. Ever since I can remember, I've been interested in the political system and having a voice. I'm a mom of 2. I stayed home with my kids. I homeschooled them. And back then I was busy writing letters to the politicians and expressing my views. And it's just kept with me. And so local government, people have such a voice. It all starts at the local level, and sometimes we get frustrated because we feel like we can't make a difference, but we really can locally. So it's a privilege to serve. Thank you, Dan. I'm just going to piggyback a little bit on what you talked about, that $2.1 million. That was for this year. We cut out of the budget. The commissioners this year are trying to be very proactive in making sure that we use our dollars extremely wisely. And we also know from the state level cuts are coming. Currently, we're getting almost $900,000 a year from county aid. We're expecting that to be cut next year. So we went to the department heads in May and said, you guys have to cut your budgets. And they all did the best they could. And so for 2020, their budgets were cut to 2.1 million. And like Dan said, that is correct. It just kicks the can down the road. However, we're trying to be sensitive to the people in the area that own businesses and also have lost employment. We need to try to keep the tax level where it's at without raising things because they're not in financial position where they were previously. One of the things that we have done, we got federal dollars in Hubbard County and it was at 2.5 million. It's every county and every township and every city got federal dollars based on their population. And so the commissioners felt very strongly that we wanted to spend as much money as possible helping the local businesses. So we designated 1.9 million at this point to give out in $20,000 grants. We had the first round, and last week we mailed out checks to different businesses that there's an application process, and then local bankers go through the applications and make sure that all the questions are answered and that they actually qualify. And then it's given as a $20,000 grant. It's not a loan, it's a grant. We're on the second round. We have a lot more money that we want to give out to area businesses. We found that a lot of businesses hadn't heard about it, so we did direct mailing this time to every business in Hubbard County. And we do take into account that if they have received federal dollars through a CARES program, they have to subtract a portion of that off. The maximum amount to a business is $20,000. I've talked with several business owners. Surprisingly, a lot of them say this is the best year they've ever had. And then there's this group over here that say, I'm still losing money every single day. I read this morning the hospitality industry is expecting 40% of hospitality related businesses in Minnesota to close by the end of the year. So this is really a problem. And one of the things that Hubbard County did, the commissioners felt like our voices were not heard outside of the metro area. A lot of years, well, I think all the time, a lot of decisions are made, and this is not, I'm not even talking about a governor, I'm just talking about politics in general in Minnesota. Decisions are made looking at the metro area, and the rural voice is not heard. And so we just joined, as Hubbard County, we just joined the Minnesota Rural Counties. And a lot of the rural counties in Minnesota are banding together, and we're trying to make our voices heard. Because as you know, our issues are different, even with COVID. We have different things that we could be doing, or even businesses that possibly could have been open because of our population that didn't work in the metro. And so one of the things that the rural counties are also working on is funding for broadband. And we've been working on this for years. We don't have any idea this year what the legislature will do. I was on a meeting with the rural Minnesota counties on Wednesday night. The deficit is projected to be $2.4 billion. And so we know that there's going to be cuts in many different areas. So we will see what happens with the broadband funding. On the flip side, there's a lot of places in Hubbard County that have excellent broadband. And there are many people that have houses up here but have not lived here full time, that have moved up here now because they were working remotely, and because many areas of Hubbard County has excellent broadband, they're able to do that. One of the other things I wanted to touch on was workforce housing. If you go out by Walmart, there's we finished the HRA, which is supported partly by county levy, or it's a separate levy,
but it does have county dollars, and commissioners, long before myself, realized that there was a housing need here. And through excellent management and also leadership, workforce housing, the first apartment building went up and was, people were able to move in this last winter. It filled up right away. It does not take vouchers. It's specifically geared for people that are in the workforce and making rents affordable. So there's a 1 and a 2 and a 3 bedroom. And one of the things that's included in the rent is internet. And so, and there, the 1 bedroom, I believe, starts at $685 and then goes up. And then the second workforce housing apartment is halfway done, and we're looking to be able to open that up in December. There's several different apartments throughout the city, and also in Akeley has a house or two, and Nevis does. Through the HRA. The HRA is now becoming self-sufficient, so we've been able to reduce the levy for this next year from $170,000 to $140,000. And I thank the leadership of former commissioners who that was their goal, was to make affordable housing for people, but then also to get them to be self-sustaining. So they can move forward, we can lower the levy, and then they can still go on and buy and provide housing for more people. This next year will be a year of strategic planning for our commissioners. We have hired someone to come in and help us with that. To my knowledge, we've never had a strategic plan in Hubbard County in the last 10, 15 years anyway. And so that's one thing that we want to focus on so that we can make big decisions and then work with the department heads and the staff. We're trying to run the county as efficient and lean as possible. One of the positives from COVID is we've learned that people can work from home and do it well. And so even looking to the future as far as our needs for buildings, that can help not put money into a building if people can work from home and do their jobs well. Some of the positions have to be done in-house, but others can be done quite well at home. One thing as a result of COVID that we're hearing about is the dire mental health issues that are coming out. Suicide rate is up, addiction is up, abuse is up, kids are struggling with school. Those are huge issues, and they're not only Hubbard County, they're nationwide. And so we all need to continue to work together to try to find good solutions as we deal with the COVID issue. Dan covered census, so I'm not going to say any more about that. Oh, I was going to tell you, I'm District 2, which covers Aragua Township, Todd Township, and the west part of Park Rapids. And so feel free to call me about any issue. I'm happy to discuss it with you, and thank you for having me.
Okay, we invited the 3 school board candidates, and none of them were able to come at this point. I know that one of them sent a statement, and we'll wait just a bit longer, but the superintendent of Park Rapids Schools, because they had a bond issue, are you Cliff?
I'm Cliff.
All right.
Hey, thanks.
He sent along a stand-in because Lance is at a conference. Cliff is going to explain a little bit about the school.
You bet. Sorry for you getting the B team. But you give me good feedback for Lance. Maybe you'll. Oh, you want me to come up here?
Yep.
Okay, you bet.
That way, that's the camera.
Oh, okay, great. This work for you?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, we're good.
Sorry for the B team. You have to give me good marks to Lance. Maybe you'll let me do one by myself again. My name is Cliff Tweedle, and I'm part of the project. It's called the Project 309 Vote Yes Committee. And so I'm just a volunteer that happened to be, like you, a resident of this area, and more specifically this school district. And I am strongly supportive of the bond issue, and I wanted to share with you for a few minutes why. and give you some details and also give you some information about where you can get more of the details. Apparently, Lance said we got 5 to 7 minutes, I will try to honor that, although I might sneak in a couple extra minutes.
We're good.
And Lance usually does 20 to 25 minutes in a presentation, and so he was really, I'm not sure how he worked this. He gets to go to a school meeting someplace, and I get to do 7 minutes worth of 25 minutes of presentation. I do have some handouts. I'll give you just a minute, along with a postcard, and it said where you can write a question. And if you give your email, name, or your phone number, if I can't answer the question, I'll give them to Lance on Monday, and he will get back to you with an answer. And given that I'm going to kind of just hit the high points, I'm sure there'll be some things that you want to know that weren't in my presentation. Also, he has a PowerPoint. I've got a handout for you right now on that will provide you some of that detail. And then there are a couple handouts I'll put around that announces 3 or 4 ice cream socials next week before the weather gets cold, where you can meet and greet superintendent, school board members, and ask any questions that you didn't get answered to today. Okay? So I'll get you right now the handout, and I'll come back to the mic.
Here, I can do that.
Great, perfect. Here are the postcards. Here is the invites to the ice cream social, and then one more. And these are the PowerPoint
Okay,
handouts, and I'll use that.
Yeah.
Okay? Perfect.
All right.
My son graduated over a dozen years ago, and to be honest, since retiring and he graduated, I probably haven't paid as much attention to the school's needs and opportunities as I might have 15, 20 years ago. And so it took me a while to answer questions for myself before I was comfortable supporting the bond issue. And the questions I had were, is there a real need or an opportunity out there? Do they have a plan to address that need? Did they do their due diligence? That is, did they talk to a lot of people, and maybe more importantly, did they listen to a lot of people? Is the plan responsible? And what I meant by responsible is, did it use the resources of this area in an appropriate way? It's not always easy to ask somebody to raise their own taxes to support a public good. And so I wanted to make sure that I could say, yes, this is a responsible plan that they have put forward. And finally, do they have, and maybe most importantly, is this going to result in an increase of educational opportunities for our youth? And for me, I'm happy to say that the answers to all those questions was yes. Now the PowerPoint, if you could hand that out,
Okay.
that I'll go through it in a little bit different order and give you again just the high points. One of the questions I had is, have they done their due diligence? Well, this started with a strategic plan on the part of the school board. They also held a million different meetings with people to get their perspective, get their advice. They worked with a consulting firm then to look at doing a physical assessment of the school, and also look through that strategic plan of what they envisioned the opportunities were in the next 10 years for the students. So they really spent a good year and a half, 2 years, and you might have been a part of some of those groups where they looked at some of the needs, they looked at some of the opportunities. There are half dozen ways this is going to improve the education for our youth. First, it's going to, and they say it provides a safe and secure learning environment. In these days, and we know it's very different than it was 30 years ago, we want to make sure that there's secure access coming in and out of the buildings. They would like to reconfigure the entrance to both Century and the high school to be able to make that secure. and make it more seamless when they have visitors and others come in. They want to create some dedicated space for both staff and students. The last time I was in Century, it was this great big school, and they had all this room, and they had these common spaces in the pods, and it's all gone right now. If you've been there recently, enrollment is really growing. It's going to increase another 10% in the next decade. And right now, those little kind of co-learning environments in the middle of those classrooms for pods in the Century School are used. And they really lose that opportunity for some of that educational opportunities between youth in groups and with teachers. And so they'd like to do something with that. They want to have more opportunities for hands-on and career exploration. Think about how your life has changed since the high school was built 50 years ago. And I'm thinking just in terms of how I look at our house and some of the challenges and opportunities that I have now, trying to retrofit that. It's the same with the school. The school, quite frankly, has good bones, but they have really small classrooms. Classrooms today need to be bigger, and that makes sense because think about the technology we have now that we didn't have 50 years ago. There are some spaces that are well loved and well used but need improvement. The auditorium is an example. There needs to locker rooms are in the basement now. They'd like to bring them up to the top level. And there's a bunch of those types of improvements they need to make. Maybe more importantly, they want to start to make the transitions between early childhood and grade school and elementary school and middle school and late middle school and high school easier. Right now, we have this odd deal where you got early childhood and high school in the same general proximity, and you got the middle school over here. They'd really like to make those transitions easier by adding more space to accommodate some of the needs they have, but also kind of retrofit which grades go together. It's much better for career exploration. It's much better for transition for the kids. Those transitions really get in the way of learning if they're not made in a good way. There is a slide, I won't go through it. It says, why do we need to reconfigure the grades? Lance did a good job with the staff putting together a list. The next two slides show in blue the new construction and in green the rehabilitation. Now, for the uninitiated walking around town, you hear things like, well, I guess they want to build a new high school. And what they want to do is about 80% rehab of buildings and a little bit of new construction. They want to tear down Frank White and build a new facility there along with the high school. But much of what you have in this plan is rehab. In the Century School, it's the same thing. They're adding a couple classrooms, but they really need to reconfigure the parking and entrance space because of some of the safety issues. But a lot of it, again, is rehab. One of the questions I ask myself is this a responsible use of money? Well, I think it is. They looked at a new construction alternative. New construction was over $80 million. This rehab alternative, along with some new construction, is about $54 million. School board really agonized over it and said, you know what, high school's got good bones, Century served us really well. We can do what we need to do if we use the money wisely in a little bit of new construction and a lot of rehabilitation, renovation. And besides, we think $54 million is enough money. We think it's more responsible than asking people to build a new high school for $80 million. The first slide shows you that part. That would be blue is where the new construction is going to be. Frank White, and the green, including that auditorium, is where the rehab will be. The second one would be also Century School. They're going to reconfigure the parking lot. I've heard horror stories about people trying to pick up their kids and drop them off there. And so they're trying to reconfigure that, and you can see there's a couple new classrooms going to be added because they really are busting at the seams, and anticipate another increase of 10% in students. Another way they looked at need is they did this physical educational adequacy assessment. They had some experts come in. You know that Christmas tree graph that you've got? Those shows yellow and red show some deficiencies, and then the green shows after the plan those deficiencies being met. Details of the bond issue. Question 1 is basically, should we spend 54? Should we vote? If you vote yes on this issue, $54.5 million will be spent on the rehab and new construction in Century School and high school. Bond issue 2, or the question number 2 is, should we spend $3.715 million on a new bus garage? Well, 10 buses sit outside right now, and they cost $18,000 a year to rent from the fair board, and to build some new tennis courts. Question number 2 will only be put into action if the answer to question number 1 is yes. If the public votes yes on 1, then a vote yes on 2 would make those improvements happen. If you vote no on 1 and yes on 2, neither happen. Okay? What's it going to cost? Again, like I said, it's always interesting to ask people to raise their taxes a little bit to support an improvement. In Park Rapids, an average house they estimate is about $200,000. Question number 1 and 2 together would raise taxes $9 a month. Do that. Obviously, if you've got a property that's a lot more, if it's $500,000, it'll be about $27 a month. Their Century School's bond is going to be paid off in 3 years, and so what they're doing is kind of wrapping around the bond issue. So once the modest tax increase goes up, they do it in such a way that it then will be flat. There won't be a bump at the beginning. And so they'll make it a little bit less when Century School bond is still available. When it starts to go down, then they'll make sure they do it in such a way that the increase is flat. If you're inclined to vote yes, be very patient with the ballot. The ballot's about this long, and it's 2 sides, and this question is at the very end. Also, if you're inclined to vote yes, I would encourage you to make sure your friends understand this issue and come and vote. When you go to a general election for a bond issue, it's always an interesting deal. You're trying to get a bond issue passed at a general election, particularly if it's a presidential year. And so I strongly encourage you to consider voting for it, and ask you to talk to your neighbors and see if there is additional interest on their part. Last question Lance always gets asked, why now? Look at all the craziness going on, like in COVID. And they did actually a survey of school residents in the school district, found 75% thought that this was the right time to do it. And you think, why is that? Well, if you look at the interest rates right now, they are, and I know this is overused, but they really are at historic lows. You are never, ever going to get cheaper money to borrow than you are right now. They estimate for these bond issues, see if I can find it quickly, I think these numbers were figured on, let me look, 2.75% and 3.5% to 3.5%, the 2 issues. Lance is really confident, given the bond market right now, the interest rates to borrow money from school right now would be much lower than that. And so probably, and there'd be a full planning phase for the next year. Construction would begin in 22 and be done in 24, which satisfies the objectives of the school district. So that's it. It'll take a lot more time, but I know you've got other stuff to do. Any questions I can try to answer? That kind of hit just the top of each of the high points.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your time.
Del Lance, thank you too for
You bet.
supervising for us.
You bet.
One of the school board candidates, who is the new one, Dana Polk.
Yes. I don't know.
Was going to try and be here. He didn't know whether he would make it or not, but he did send a statement. So I'm going to have Florence just read that short statement.
Thanks. Is it Dan Coca? Is that how it's said? Dana Coca?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, on behalf of Dana Coca, my apologies. I am unable to attend the meeting this Saturday. If for any reason I am able to make the meeting, I will stop by. I am very excited to be running for school board. My wife Tia and I have 4 boys, grades 4, 2, 1, and preschool. As I've shared with you through our phone conversation, that would have been with her, I feel that it is important for parents to get involved, be a voice, and use their gifts. I have a heart for kids. My degree is in elementary education, and I have worked at Calvary for 15 years as Director of Youth and Education. I am an active parent, and people recognize me within our community through working with youth, coaching community education sports, teaching, encouraging, and most importantly, being a loving dad and husband. In this time of COVID, I really feel pushed to run for school board because I kept hearing parents say, we just need to make it through this time. Though I agree, I'm passionate about pushing our children towards academic excellence. Not only do I want to see our youth succeed in life, I want to see them mentally and emotionally well. As parents of 4 boys within the Park Rapids School District, we have been very happy. I feel as though our vision within Park Rapids is looking ahead, and I hope to be part of that process. Thanks. Just tell Dave Paul that I'm here.
Thank you, everyone, for coming this afternoon, and we appreciated hearing from all the candidates that could be here, and hope that you'll look up the websites of everybody else, and please vote whenever you're ready now. So, thank you very much.